decks are either getting a slap on the wrist or they're getting limbs chopped off. Hey guys, this is Tom Box. Welcome to MST.TV. This is a throwback segment to one of our old classics, Ban List R&D, where we look into the ins and outs of how to approach a ban list and what seems to be the most fair way of getting into a ban list. And hopefully Konami watches this and takes inspiration of how to hit certain cards in a way that we would all be satisfied with. So I kind of want to split this video into two parts. Part one is going to be about Tearlaments, and I want to give it more attention because it's the gatekeeper deck. Like, actually, where someone sees too many Tearlament players at locals, they just don't want to join. And even my locals, I'm not sure about yours, but there's been a significant decline in player turnout for locals just because there's too much Tearlament. And that does impact business, but players would rather just buy a random pack off of the shelf, and maybe if they pull something good like a Cash Tier Fenrir, they're gonna be like, yo, I feel like a winner. Whereas if they just join locals, they're gonna feel like they just donated into the war chest of Tearlament players. So yeah, it makes sense. And the part two is, even behind Tearlaments, there are certain strategies that just aren't very fun and is a complete blowout when they get them. And the reason why they're good is because they do work against Tearlaments, because they are also pretty degenerate strategies themselves. So just because we hit Tearlament, it doesn't mean that, you know, other things are off the hook. Other things will also have to take a hit. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So if you guys are going to enjoy videos like this one, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button, hit subscribe, ding notification bell, and let's talk about Tearlaments. So I'm going to give you guys 3 different ways of hitting like Tearlaments, and luckily for us, OCG did a similar hit multiple times over, so we have the data of the result. And don't give me the, oh, these hits are going to kill the deck. It's not going to kill the deck, all right? We already know this. They remained as the best deck even after these hits, and each hit being more severe than the last, we already know they are going to dominate regardless, and they'll find different ways to readapt because that's just how good this deck is. It's so resilient. Guys, leave it down in the comment section of where you believe Tearlaments should be. Should they be completely slaughtered, or are you going to put them under a microscope and surgically remove pieces so that it's still competitive, but definitely not the undisputed best deck of the format? All right, let me know. Okay, so let's get started on the first way to hit them, taking out the Ishizu stuff. This approach would mean limiting Keldo, limiting Mudora, limiting Kelbeck, and semi-limiting Yugioh. You might have noticed I'm not actually banning any of these cards. Yes, we're taking them out, but likely what the players are going to do is keep every single copy they can in, because it's still really good to mill these cards in the graveyard. They extend, they are consistency cards at the very least, and at worst, they're a DD Crow that shuffles cards back into the deck. And that's kind of the point I want to address. A lot of the times when we're playing against this deck, if there was no Keldo or Mudora, you probably would have won that game. You have the graveyard interaction, but right now, if you try to activate Sprite Elf, you try to activate a Bestial, you go as far as sneezing on your deck, they're going to be like, oh, effect, shuffle everything back in, and all of a sudden you don't have a graveyard to play with, or the stuff that you were trying to banish, they're gone. They're back into the deck. So that's what made it just that much harder. It turned basically a 4 interaction deck into a 6 interaction deck, and the last 2 interaction are the ones that disrupt your follow-up. That's the worst part. Basically, you can't even have a proper turn because I've got my card right here, you know, and all they got to do is mill something that doesn't even do anything when they gets milled, because it does something later. It does something on your turn. It's pretty awful. So even if you hit these cards, this is a slap on the wrist because they already know their follow-up. Their follow-up is to go into Photon Hypernova and buy a bunch of cards called Kashtira Tearlaments or Tearlaments Kashtira, and boom, deck is fixed. They got more millers, they can get their fusions out, and more or less we're still in the same phase. But I do think it does matter if they lose out on some of the shuffle back, because we're taking away the last bit of interaction that they get against us that usually would be our recovery play, and this is really aimed towards that. And also the other reason of why we're not hitting this and banning cards straight up is because there's still more Earth Fairy products coming out. Yes, if you, aside from Ishizu, there's another Earth Fairy deck user, that's Odeon and his cards, and they do benefit off of using Ishizu's Earth Fairies. So I guess they might live a little longer just so that that other deck can play. You know, it really sucks to shoot yourself in the foot before your product comes out. You don't kill a deck before it comes out. Totally awesome. But this is what it is. So I guess we'll kind of find out if this is the route that they take. It doesn't seem to be that impactful. I mean, they could straight up just ban perhaps like Keldo or Mudora. Hit one of those just so that they don't have that many graveyard interaction. That's a potential line. What do you guys think about this? Is this one too weak? Because this is honestly the weakest one. We already know they're full power in the extra deck at this very moment. So this is one of the potential angles if they want to take it light. So the second way to hit them is to cut down the names. And we've seen the effectiveness over in OCG, sure, from the tier 0 that they were, now they're down to a tier 1. Oh my god, I'm just a tier 1 deck now. But they're still dominating. They're clearly the most dominant deck still by a very far margin. So what's the difference between limiting these cards here? So if we limit Havnis, Sharon, and Pearl and those are the 3 cards I'm going to limit, I'm not banning anything straight up because I don't really believe in just taking cards out unless it's really that big of a problem. It's a 1-card FTK combo. Sure, let's ban some cards. But this one here, we can still interact with them. But what does it mean to actually limit Havnis and Sharon? Like, okay, if you look at it this way, if they activate Havnis, you can expect that they won't mill a Havnis, which means they only get to mill 2 chances into a different fusion of the different name. They can't hit themselves, which is good. If they have both Havnis and Sharon limited, if they open both cards in their hand, they're down to just Merly to get that fusion, or they need to use Rhino Heart to dump it into the graveyard to summon itself out to get that play. So there's a lot of workaround they have to reinvest, and not only do they have to do that, but the opponent gets the additional knowledge. They know that if they have a Havnis in hand, they're not going to be able to mill a Havnis. If they have Sharon in their hand, they're not milling Sharon. So the hand predictability also becomes easier, so you can account for less things and you won't get punished for it. Pearl Areno limited will damage consistency. They do have a future card, the trap card, that you can just banish it to search for a card that mentions Visa Starfrost, and that also includes Pearl Areno. So that's kind of the reason why we're limiting this one down. And it's just not just that you only search Pearl Areno, you search for a card that mentions Visa Starfrost, which would include most of the Tearlaments traps. Now, I don't necessarily think that this is going to straight up kill the deck. I think it's going to weaken the deck. It's going to reduce the consistency of how often the fusions are occurring based off of random mills. But they still have 3 Merleys, they still have 3 Rhino Hearts. If they get the Rhino Heart play, they can get the Sharon or Havnis that's stuck in hand to the graveyard. Okay, that's fine. But also, I think another way for them to readapt if names are hit, likely they're going to play King of the Swamp to replace some of these names. And on top of the name replacement, they also get to add polymerization. And if you get both, say, Sharon or Havnis stuck on the field, playing a polymerization is like literally the best play because it gives you every single follow-up available, turns all your monsters into fusion activations in the graveyard, and that's probably their best pivot. And King of the Swamp acts as any name. You can play Grapha, you can play Roll Kalos straight up. So I don't think they're dead. They'll find a way to adapt, and they'll try their best to stay at the top. So there's 2 ways of hitting Kit Kalos. There's limiting it and banning it. If you limit Kit Kalos, then this card is 100% useless going second, especially when playing against Kashtira. They're going to Diablosis it out of the extra deck every single time. It's not going to be able to do anything about it, so you're not going to be even able to play with the Kit Kalos, which leads to the same effect as banning it. But if you go first, you stuff Kit Kalos, you can still build your board, and the other guy literally can't really do anything about it. You're still playing at a full power deck. So if you do hit Kit Kalos by limiting it, you're probably going to have to attach it to a different way of, kind of power gating this deck by, limiting other cards. That's kind of my opinion. But if you straight up ban Kit Kalos, these are the things that you lose. Number 1, instant fusion. Your sack card is more or less useless, so you're probably not going to play it unless you really want that Mud Dragon, right? Man, love that Mud Dragon for the anti-targeting, which is actually a really good effect. The other thing is you lose the mill 8 play and an additional search, which damages consistency straight up because you're not getting to add or mill a card into the graveyard. The second thing is you're not going to be able to get a strong follow-up when it comes to like summoning out Havnis. You're gonna have to try to force, I don't know what you're trying to force onto the board at this point, because like it really shuts down like a lot of the follow-up, but it is there. Also, the mill 8 play is gone because you can't add a Merly and then Kit Kalos target herself, send itself to the graveyard, and then summon out the Merly to get the mill 8. So it makes the mirror match even weirder, and it makes the Ishizu stuff a little bit worse. But if you still have like Keldo and Mudora, that still doesn't really matter. You get that shuffle back. So those are the things that you essentially lose if you actually hit Kit Kalos. And I know some of you guys are saying, and Roll Kalos is inaccessible. No, we already talked about this. You can just use King of the Swamp. And if you hit Kit Kalos, likely the follow-up is going to be they're going to be adding the fusion stuff back. They might put Shaddoll stuff in there. They're just going to find different ways to actually fuse into impactful monsters without relying on already having like fusion-based monsters in the graveyard. So that's kind of where they're going to do, or where they're going to go to readapt. So those are different ways of hitting Tearlaments. How would you hit Tearlaments? Do you agree with some of these ways of hitting it, or do you think no, just ban some of these names and just call it a day? Well, leave it down in the comment section. Now let's talk about the stuff behind the gate. So if Tearlaments take a step down, then what's the deck that should maybe take its place or shouldn't take its place? Well, I'll start with one, Sword Soul. I'm just kidding, that's a totally fair deck, and it's really rewarding if you know what you're doing with that deck. I think that deck is fine. I meant to say the feathered friend of Sword Soul, the Philanderies. I'm just looking at two cards here, Barrier Statue of the Stormwind and Harpy's Featherstorm. Those two cards are literally going to be the next gatekeepers, and in the least fun way possible. At least the other one, you can see people try to interact. You know, if you got a better hand, you might have that chance. This one is draw the out. Just draw the out, guys. Oh my god, you're not skilled. You can't draw the out? Okay, yeah, I'm not a fan of that. Because, like, Barrier Statue completely shuts you out. I get it. Philanderies only does really 4 things on the opening turn. The opening turn is aimed towards maybe even 5 things if you know what you're doing. The 4 things are going to be limit your special summons to only wins, attack position monsters can't activate their effects, you can't really do anything because they have a negate and they have 1 removal. Those are the 4 things, and worst case scenario, if they do time their trap in the correct timing and get Apex Avian out later, then you got the 5th thing, book the remaining monster face down. That's 5 disruptions on monster-based effects. Cool. Yeah, and you also have 1 negation. So that Apex Avian, absolutely crucial. If you're not playing it, you're crazy because you're gonna get evenly matched, and that is going to suck for you because you're not gonna be able to recover. Okay, so let's take away the Barrier Statue. We already know what happens when Barrier Statue gets banned. Master Duel gave us the world-class example of, yeah, it's gonna be knocked down a peg completely. And I think it's fine. You still have the other 3 interactions, which makes the deck fair. I mean, you can still have Book of Moon, you can still have like other set cards to play against your opponent, but I think that is where it stands. Oh, don't give me the argument, oh, but the Kashtira deck can summon out Unicorn. Yeah, and that Unicorn is getting spun right to the top of the deck thanks to Ryza. And that means they have to open 2 Unicorns to play. They can't even kill you because of it. Alright, there's a lot of limitation. They have to summon it in defense mode just so they can add a card, or they have to special summon in attack mode, attack over what? The Barrier Statue, and then what? What are they going to do now? They can't activate the effect. M-Pen's still on board. So, no, it's not a... They've got a Unicorn. They have an out. It should be fine. This isn't one of those decks where you should just need to draw the out, and it's okay. Yeah, this is something that I think deserves a hit. Harpy's Featherstorm. If you ban Barrier Statue, I'll concede the Featherstorm. You can keep the Featherstorm. That's a side deck card. I'll take it. If you have it, I'll try to find different ways to play around it, but it is also another big blowout card where it doesn't promote, you know, smart interaction. It says, I have the card, therefore I win. Kind of like having D-Barrier or Maxi during the... Ooh, which format should I compare that to? Yeah, the Zodiac format. It's like that, alright? Now, if Tearlaments would take a step down from their throne, then the next in the line of succession I would say is Sprights, but that's a control deck. How do you even hit them? Are they even a problem, or will Kashtira just kind of push them aside? Honestly, I don't think they need to take a hit, because if they do take a hit, then Kashtira is going to dominate, and Sprights didn't really get a full domination. It's always been that deck that people thought, hey, they're not overpowered. Well, I guess they were kind of overpowered during the time when they did have Ronin Toadin, so that's why they took that Ronin Toadin hit. But nowadays, they have to commit a lot of resources, and when they die a horrible death. You get Dark Rulered and then get your board wiped, and then they just have like 1 or 2 negates. It's GG. So, is the deck still a problem? If so, how do you hit it? We took the damage of, you know, ease of combo plus the recurrence and the recovery through Ronin Totem ban. So if we kind of want to hit this deck now, they're just hit the consistency. I would say Blue, Jet, and Starter all to 2. That would make sense to me. You could even limit the Jet, it would still be fine. Or you can do what OCG did, straight up just ban Toad. Therefore, they don't have access to Toad. I mean, that's okay, but that's... If they're going down that line, they're really pushing people to playing Gishki Sprites. Gishki Sprites does not need the Totally Awesome. It's still able to function fully without that, and it still builds some of the nastiest boards available. So if they really want to push us to play Gishki Sprites, that's one way to do it. But I think over here in TCG land, we do appreciate the variety of having the options to play, as long as the option, well, if we're not, just tunnel visioning into the tier 0, then that's fine, I guess. But that's just my line here. Let me know what you guys think. It should also be on the ban list here. Did I miss something? I didn't want to make this video too long, so leave it down in the comment section. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the ban list R&D once again coming back onto the channel. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button, hit subscribe, ding notification bell. Appreciate you guys for doing so, and I'll see you guys in the next one.